Kicking off the list at number 10, Darkclaw. Coming from the Amalgam universe, where DC and Marvel combine powers figuratively and literally, we get a Wolverine-Batman double whammy. First appearing in Legends of the Darkclaw issue 1 back in 1996, at just age 5, young Logan Wayne witnessed the death of his parents, so now we have that Batman origin right off the bat to lay the foundation. Good stuff, always promising. And then Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Canada. But after poachers ambushed his home, we have even more family members biting the bullet. So far, so sad. Okay, so Logan Wayne enlisted then in the Royal Canadian Air Force and soon after the Weapon X program. This is all starting to sound a bit familiar, I bet. That's when the Wolverine origin comes in. Logan Wayne got the adamantium treatment, but it was a failure. In a way, kind of. Because Logan wasn't this mindless brute like he was in the comics. See, now he kept his sanity. So now we're starting to get more of a positive vibe, which is good for a good start of this list. Afterwards, he was a free man, so he studied criminology, forensics, gymnastics, martial arts, anything he could get his hands on, including the 127 major styles of combat. That mixed with the claws, Logan Wayne is somebody I'd never want to cross paths with, either as Batman or just Wolverine. Either way, I'm like, no, you guys are both gonna kill me. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, support our man Wolverine, he is Canadian, we are Canadian, only makes sense, really hit those thumbs up, you guys are the best. Let's get back to the list. Number 9, Wild Thing. For this one, we go over to the MC2 universe where Elektra married Wolverine and soon after came a child, of course. That daughter was named Rena Logan, and if that name doesn't ring a bell, she's also called Wild Thing. Marvel's MC2 imprint quickly gained momentum after What If, issue 105, which introduced us to a universe full of other super kids. Wild Thing's powers are very similar to her father's, obviously. I mean, even just by looking at her, you could probably make a guess who she's an offspring of. All that aggression, you're like, okay, it's definitely Wolverine. She also possesses the power of regenerative healing and super strength, but what makes her stand out really is the psychic claws. Instead of adamantium claws, she has minor psionic abilities that allow her to manifest her own claws, but if she focuses hard enough, if she really thinks, she can have claws, real life claws like her father, and dish out physical damage too. Mental, physical, she's got you beat in both realms. Number 8, Hydra Wolverine. Hearing Cap say Hail Hydra in Endgame was a wild moment to witness in theaters. Steve using future knowledge to save the day instead of kicking everybody's ass in the elevator, whilst tipping his hat to comic book fans, it was a nice moment, beautifully written in. In Exiles issue 92, we get to see Logan turn sides briefly as well. In this reality, Wolverine is a Hydra agent and the Invisible Woman is Madam Hydra, and to make things even more strange, they're both lovers. Yeah, this odd couple here alongside Slaymaster left their reality after fighting the Exiles, and they tried to conquer the multiverse. Hydra Wolvie wasn't around too long, for he was actually brutally taken out by the Cat with his own claws in New Exiles issue 12. Number 6, Earth X. Also known as Earth 9997, this version of Iron Man hit the pages back in Earth X issue 0. This time around, the human race is at risk due to the release of Terrigen mists. So Tony decides, you know what, I'm just gonna isolate myself, not being sure how the mist would react, which is a fair point. So in turn, he would wear his armor all the time, and then eventually he made an Iron Manor in New York. Super cautious, you know, with today's stuff going on, you can't really blame him. He went even further when he decided it was best to create his own team, the Iron Avengers. This guy was super paranoid. So eventually Galactus did come along, so Tony used his Iron Manor and distracted the Celestials beforehand. Now during this, Tony lost his life. Some wreckage impaled him, and for the first time in a while, Tony was able to breathe open air. How, you ask? Well, he died, and his soul immediately went to the realm of the dead, and that's when Captain Marvel's soul recruited him for an army set to take on death. Which is, first of all, nuts, because even after you die in Marvel Comics, you can't just chill out in heaven. You have to go fight another war immediately, come on. But Death did eventually die, and that's when Tony got another huge upgrade in Paradise. Using the High Evolutionary's devices, Tony was changed into this angelic being, of course, still with wings. And he looked like Iron Man, so that's fun. You can customize your own angel outfit once you get up there. That's good to know. Number 5, Tony Doom. Since What If is currently dropping weekly episodes on Disney+, we have to mention one of the more wild issues. What if Tony Stark had become Dr. Doom? It would probably be pretty bad. Yeah, yes, it is. So here in the storyline, that both of them go to the same college instead of Reed Richards being Victor's roommate. So now it's Tony. Two geniuses in one dorm. Sounds like they would make dreams come true, but in reality, it was a living nightmare waiting to happen. Doom tricked Tony into switching bodies Freaky Friday style. And on top of that, Tony's memories were also wiped. So Tony, in Doom's body, gets in heat for the experiment, and in turn, he gets sent back to Liberia. Meanwhile, Doom is in line to take over Stark Industries. He still is Tony Stark, so down the road, Doom Industries was now a competitor to Stark Industries. He's brilliant in any way. The pair end up creating their own armors. Of course, Tony builds a red and gold Doom armor, while Doom makes a green and gray Iron Man armor. I'll give you a second to absorb that. There we go. It's a fun little swap with good action, but it's a little bit too confusing of a Freaky Friday type plot. But it's worth a shot. Go give it a try. Number 4, Dead Man Walking. We look now over to Fantastic Four: The End, released in 2007. Most of Tony's story here was the same, but during the Mutant Wars, Tony lost his life. Now, he didn't get redirected to a paradise where he would then become an Iron Man themed angel. Instead, he uploaded his subconsciousness into an AI. So now he lives through his armors, just swapping back and forth, walking around, which sounds like a solution, I guess, but living forever? Come on, Tony, I don't think that's a way to go, really. Number 3, Primal Wolverine. A side we don't get to see too often is Logan's animalistic side. Although maybe it's for the best, we don't want to see that. We don't want any of that smoke, really. Coming from the Mutant X series back in 1998, we pick up with Wolverine, Sabretooth, and Wildchild, but this time around they're referred to as the Pack. Now in this story, Logan still goes crazy after Weapon X does their thing, but this time he's not alone. Sabretooth and Wildchild also endure these crazy experiments, each of them also going primal in the end. Now the 3 of them end up roaming the Canadian wilderness like an actual pack. But this pack is one you want to avoid. They end up going nuts by the end of the comic, like I said, but while they're in the wild, they did see other mutants, and in turn they all worked together for a hot moment to figure out what was happening in Weapon X. They have the right idea, but those animalistic impulses are just too powerful. Messy. Number 2, Old Man Logan. Mark Millar's Old Man Logan begins in volume 3 of Wolverine on issue 66, and this is a future where supervillains have sadly won for the most part. Hulk and She-Hulk had kids, the Hulklings, who would beat the crap out of you if you didn't pay rent. So yeah, it's an odd future to say the least. Everybody has their own territory, so Logan now has to pay up for living in his. Hawkeye, who was much older and this time around he was blind, needed Logan's assistance to get across the country and deliver a secret package. This was a way Logan could get some of that rent money, so let's do it. Just talking about Logan paying rent money is a weird thing. When they get back from their trip, things have changed drastically. Now Hulk Gang actually took out Logan's family because, you know, they were bored. And that's what people do when they're bored in this dark future. No more games, no more talking. Now it's time for Logan just to get payback. Simple as that. Alternate reality, same temper. Logan gets Banner, he gets him right through the chest, so naturally he hulks out. And then when Hulk eats Logan, you think that would for sure be the end of it, but that's when Logan pops out from inside Banner. Surprise, we're gonna throw up. And finally, number 1. Old Man Venom. Coming from Edge of Venomverse issue 4, we see Logan get captured by Angel, who is Archangel in disguise, and Hulk Jr. This story played out differently than the Old Man Logan storyline because this Wolverine told Bruce Banner Jr. what happened to his father. Archangel took Logan to the danger room of the X-Mansion, and that's where he and Bruce Jr. just ambushed him. Wasn't very happy this time around, although the first one wasn't really happy in any way, I guess, either. Bruce Jr. had this idea that maybe if he kills Logan, he can then use his DNA and create symbiote hybrid clones, but what ended up happening was Logan fought a Venomsaurus Rex, that same T-Rex from the original Old Man Logan storyline. The same one we see chasing Hawkeye and Logan. So he fought it, got eaten by it, and then considering the fact that Logan was eaten by the Hulk and ripped his way out, we already know that this is going to be much better. He comes out better than ever. The symbiote ends up bonding with Logan in the T-Rex tummy, giving us a pretty exciting extreme upgrade. He rips his way through the dinosaur and subsequently rips his way through his enemies. Guys, those were 10 weird alternate versions of Wolverine. Thank you so much for watching, but before you go, please feel free to drop us some comments down below. What are some lists that you'd love to see in the near future? Who deserves the spotlight right now? Tell us all below. Tell us all your secrets. Tell us everything. I've been your host, Taylor McWaters. Keep being you, and we'll see you next time on Top 10 Nerd. Peace. Kicking off the list at number 10, Spider's Man. We'll kick off this list on an itchy note. This version of Spider-Man from Earth 11580 is actually Spider's Man. You might be asking, wait a minute Taylor, spiders? Like more than one? Oh yeah, he's actually made up of thousands of spiders that work together as if they're one person, like a hive mind. See, before that incident, that horrible incident, Peter and Gwen were visiting Horizon Labs, and instead of one spider taking a bite out of Peter's finger and then blessing him with biceps and perfect vision, he instead fell into a pit of radioactive spiders where they all consumed him, and subsequently his consciousness was spread out through all of those spiders. Hive mind, so gross. How horrible is this already? If I just got robbed and Spider-Man came to save the day, I'd be sick. Just seeing a cover of this guy on Spider-Geddon issue 3 makes me so uncomfortable. I mean, hats off to Christos Gage and George Molina for making this character one of the most unique versions. You can definitely say that, definitely unique. The Spider. Coming from Earth 15, the Spider, also known as Inmate 24739, made his first appearance in Exiles issue 12. Inmate, what's going on with that? Is Peter bad in this reality? Yeah, he's actually pretty horrible. He's a redhead who has a lot in common with Cletus Cassidy, and in turn he gets slapped with 67 consecutive life sentences by a jury. He's not as into the saving lives thing, he's rather into the opposite. He joined Weapon X after being drafted by the Timebreakers. Now, as horrible as the Spider sounds, he still feels like Peter when you read this comic. He has a similar sense of humor as Deadpool here, so it's still fun, although he's evil. Hyperion of Earth 4023 also joined, became the leader, and the Spider stood by his side as they planned on conquering multiple realities. Pete met his fate in issue 44 of Exiles when Firestar hit him with a Mega Blast. He turned into ash. Already cremated, look at that, we get to save money. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help our nerd squad over here in our nerd base. You guys are the best. Thanks for sticking around. Let's keep going with this list. Number 8, Spider-Kid. Making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, Earth 218 Peter's childhood is actually darker this time around, believe it or not. See, both of his parents passed away in a car crash, and Uncle Ben was a mean old man afterwards who was just horrible to Peter all the time. Peter actually changed his name to Charlie, and then he didn't try and be good. He actually became quite a troubled young man. He had to spend 2 years at the Administration for Child Services and then 2 more years at the Horizon Juvenile Detention Center. In order to get by, he chose to steal money from street dealers. He's not a bad kid, although I've just said that he is a few times. He just had a horrible childhood and he slipped down the wrong path. It happens. But that all changed when Charlie was recruited into the Superior Spider Army by Ashley Barton. She calls him Grandpa because he reminds her of an older Pete from her reality. He's like, yeah, I'm 13 though, please don't call me Gramps. Awesome. Number 7, Captain Logan. Coming from the Noir series, Earth 90214, Jim Logan was a detective, much like our 616 Logan. His past was also troubled. His partner was his half-brother named Dog Logan, who has the brains of a bedbug and the manners of a gutter rat. And that's in his words, not mine. His origins are a little bit messy when it comes to the Noir verse, because in X-Men Noir, Mark of Cain, Wolverine's origins are that of a bootlegger whose past is never really touched on. All we know is that he's a former lover of Jean Grey, and that he was the one who took out Scott Summers' left eye. But here in Wolverine Noir, he's a detective with a gritty Catholic past. Either way, the Noir versions of Wolverine is quite dark, and although his claws aren't built in this time around, he still has them as a weapon of choice. Real Freddy Krueger style, I like it. Number 6, Weapon X. One of the more extreme versions of Wolverine, Weapon X came from the Age of Apocalypse storyline, and the first time we meet him is in X-Men Alpha issue 1. Weapon X was a member of the X-Men, only this time around Magneto is running the team. How lovely is that? He's great. One of the most notable differences between this Logan and others is that Weapon X is missing a hand. He had battled Cyclops, and although he lost it in the fight, Logan can still use claws on that arm. Now in this reality, Weapon X was married to Jean Grey, so a little light in this warped reality. Love still exists out there, it's true. He later on became Weapon Omega, aka the heir to Apocalypse, so it's really not that great. There's love, but there's also evil stuff. Number 5, Zombie Wolverine. We're just a day out from another episode of What If on Disney Plus, and we're all so excited, and I'll be honest, a little bit nervous because those zombie Avengers are still super powered and they're still on the way. Zombie Wolverine first appeared in Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 22. Now at the Xavier Institute, Wolverine and the X-Men were taken on a zombified Alpha Flight when Magneto came in to save the day. He was part of the crew that went to fight off the remaining horde, but I did introduce him as Zombie Wolverine, so yes, he was sadly infected. Wolverine was bitten by Zombie Hawkeye and Zombie Cap, and after he turned into one himself, he defeated and then ate the Silver Surfer. An afternoon snack quickly gave Wolverine cosmic powers, quite the upgrade. It's a gory good time. If we had X-Men in the MCU right now, the zombie episodes would have been so much better, but we can't complain, it's still good stuff. Wolverine is a main character in the Marvel Zombies Dead Days and a minor antagonist in Marvel Zombies vs. Army of Darkness. If you haven't read either, I recommend you read both of them. Read all the zombie comics. I shouldn't have to sell you on how cool zombie superhero comics are. You know? Number 4, Mr. Murder Hands. There's a nickname, a rather fitting one, really. Logan from Earth 65 first appeared in Spider-Gwen Volume 2, Issue 20. He was a former Japanese samurai who was cursed by a witch. The curse was that you have to live on Earth for all the days that his targets, the people that he killed, would have. So he's gonna see quite a few days, basically. His memory here is also erased, and it happens right after he joins the Weapon X program, where he's also given his trademark adamantium claws. When he later joins S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Black Ops team, his fellow operatives give him the nickname of Mr. Murderhands. Nice. Oh, this is your teammate, Edward Murderhands. Yeah, make sure you sign in. Great, break a like, team. Number 3, Superior Spider. Starting in 2013, this version is the outcome of the Dying Wish storyline when Dr. Octavius planted his mind inside Peter Parker's. Nice little swap. There we go. We see this begin in Amazing Spider-Man issue 698. Peter gets a priority call from the Avengers, and when he meets them all on the raft, Cap informs him that one of his old enemies is dying, and Peter knows that it's Doc Ock before he even tells him. Cap says that he's asking for him. Well, rather, he's asking for Peter Parker. Peter goes in and he asks everybody for a private moment, just the two of them to talk it out, right? But when they're in there for that hot second, it's revealed that they somehow have switched bodies, page 20 and 22. So Peter in Doc's body is freaking out. He's worried what the hell to do, because now he's got his powers and his families and his friends are all at risk. You gotta stay away from those brain-swapping Octobots, that's the key. I'm not going to tell you what happens because it's really enjoyable. Go check it out yourself. Number 2, Spider-Boy. Marvel and DC are powerhouses, both on page and on screen. So when the two companies combine forces, we get some pretty amazing characters like Spider-Boy. Making his first debut in Marvel vs. DC issue 3, residing on Earth 9602, Spider-Boy is an amalgam of Spider-Man and Superboy. How epic is that? Spider-Boy is a clone. Now he's a clone of Peter who was created during an accidental lab explosion. General Ross felt responsible for this explosion, so he ended up adopting the young lab lad. They were a fun duo until Ross was taken out by a mugger, so Pete then became a hero. He put together the suit, became famous almost overnight. That whole event kicked off the with great power comes great responsibility vibe. Now back when he returned to Project Cadmus, Pete was given a web pistol to help him swing around town. In this story, he doesn't have webs here, but it doesn't really matter. Because of his new superpowers, he can focus gravity inwards to make himself stronger and move faster, or he can lower gravity around himself in order to jump higher, further, and faster. He just clicks the off switch on gravity and then climbs walls. Must be nice. Guy probably kills it with wall sits. And finally, number 1, Flash, Betty, and John. For the last one on this list, we figured we'd end on a 3-in-1. What If is releasing weekly episodes on Disney Plus currently, so I have to throw it back to one of my favorite issues from Volume 1 back in the 70s. What if someone else besides Spider-Man had been bitten by the radioactive spider? Written by Don Glutt, What If Volume 1 Issue 7, we get to see Flash Thompson, Betty Brant, and John Jameson get their shot at being Spider-Man. How lucky. First, Flash gets bit, he gets the powers, and he teaches a bad driver a lesson. With his new strength, I mean, he's a little bit too harsh. The middle finger always works, but okay, rocky start, that's fine. Then he decides to take a crack at professional wrestling. He thinks it's going to be a breeze, but due to said super strength, he killed the guy instead of tapping him out. Not much of a superhero there. The Vulture ends up ending his not so hot streak, so next up we have Betty Brant. Her costume is arguably the flashiest. It makes for great photo shoots, apparently. Gotta get those likes somehow, make those superpowered TikToks. I'm here for it. But when she runs out of web fluid while striking a pose, the thief that takes Uncle Ben's life runs on by, and no one does anything about it. And finally, this issue shows us John Jameson getting his shot. While his outfit was also pretty on point, his judgment was not. John tried to stop a space shuttle from crashing and didn't live to tell the tale. Next time you feel like web swinging to work, just remember that the responsibility thing is just as important as the powers.
And at 10, Poison. Poisons are a species of crystalline extraterrestrials spawned by the Poison Queen. Originating on Earth 17952, the Poisons spent an unknown amount of time as prey for larger, stronger creatures before discovering that they could assimilate symbiotes and their hosts to become more powerful. Poison Captain Marvel was the Poison who assimilated venomized Captain Marvel of Earth 81622. Poison Captain Marvel attacked D-Man and Rage on Manhattan Bridge alongside Poison Killer Thrill, Poison Hyperion, Poison Gamora, and Poison Thing in order to attract more powerful heroes. Kind of a burn. This attack led to the creation of Poison D-Man, Poison Rage, and Poison Thor. However, this poison most likely died along with the others when the Queen was killed by the time-displaced Jean Grey. And at 9, Imposter. Part of a training program with the intent of eventually replacing Earth's heroes, this Skrull was permanently turned into a copy of the Kree warrior Mar-Vell, to avoid any possible detection. However, a problem emerged when the real Mar-Vell died. so this Skrull was no longer useful in the training program, and he couldn't really return to his true form, preventing him from returning to his normal life. However, he wasn't just going to lie down and die, so the Skrull allied himself with two other Skrulls in the same situation, posing as the deceased heroes of John Proudstar and Adam Warlock. After some time, they had a run-in with Kitty Pryde, who they mistook for her Skrull imposter and then took prisoner. But realizing that she was the real deal and that Galactus was about to arrive, they let her go and joined forces with her and Wolverine in an attempt to save their people and the X-Men. The Skrull was ultimately gunned down by another Skrull when he attempted to stop a Skrull general from keeping people from getting on board a spaceship, I'm guessing to evacuate. And it ate Rogue. When Rogue touched Ms. Marvel to absorb her powers, Carol grabbed onto her arm and didn't let go. So in addition to Carol's Kree DNA glitching up Rogue's powers, the prolonged contact caused each to end up absorbing the powers, memories, and personality of the others. They kinda swapped places. Rogue sought out Professor X's help, and afterwards she was sent to space as a consequence of an encounter with Brood. Rogue and Carol Danvers were briefly visited by Carol's counterpart from the Prime Marvel universe using the powers of the Reality Stone, since the gem links her to the other wielders of the gem in other realities, and they can all kinda like communicate, with the wielder of this Earth being Anna Marie. They talked about the differences between their lines before the visiting Carol was pulled to Earth 70875. But yeah, Rogue having Carol Danvers' powers, that's actually pretty weird.
Coming to you live from Warp World, one of the most out there versions of Peter Parker hit the page in Infinity Wars issue 3. Moon Knight and Spider-Man are gearing up. They're making a game plan to take down Gamora. And Spider-Man says, look, just punch whoever I punch in a second. Deal? Easy peasy. That turns out to be a lot harder than imagined when the both of them merge together. Alongside Arachnite, we got to meet some other amalgams of characters. We got Ghost Panther, Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and more, so much more. Peter's mind was also separated into 4 different personalities, each desiring dominance. So we have Science Pete, the Knight Pete, Friendly Neighborhood Arachnid Pete, and for when it comes to signing checks and shaking hands, we have CEO Pete. Number 6, Astro Spider. Jumping on over to Earth 3145, making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 2, John Jameson III was an astronaut for NASA, and during one mission, a spider got trapped in his suit, which it's an absolute nightmare scenario right there. But when the space shuttle was hit by cosmic waves, John then obtained these amazing new abilities. He didn't come home and stop bank robbers one quip and whip at a time. See, this Earth was now destroyed by a thermonuclear war, so Jameson was assigned to oversee the construction of a spacecraft on the Nautilus platform. He, along with 35 others, are the last of humanity. After this cosmic mishap, John can now read minds. He can create webs of solid telekinetic energy, but he met his fate a few issues later when he was feasted on by Verna. Sometimes being a spider totem sucks. Number 5, the Savage Spider-Man. Spider-Man, but a savage. So savage. This Peter Parker entered comics in Vault of Spiders issue 1. When a plane went down over Antarctica, Peter was the only survivor out of his family. He didn't have powers yet, he didn't swing his way to freedom, but he survived by using the last parachute. During his rough emergency landing, the wind moved him around quite a bit, and unfortunately he landed in one of the worst places on the planet, a spider's nest in Savage Land. I was just done with the spider stuff, now we're back to being itchy again. They all just bit him over and over and over again, and powers of course soon followed. The Savage Spider-Man was the new protector of Savage Land. Later on, he was recruited into the Spider Army by Ghost Spider to fight off the Inheritors back on our Earth 616. Honestly, this is a great version. I love when Wilson Fisk sees the boy growing up again. See, he was the reason the plane went down in the first place those many years ago. So when he returns to see if this Savage Spider-Man is real, he gets a little payback. Number 4, Hostess Cake Spider-Man. I think it's time we talk about one of the weirdest but yummiest versions of Spider-Man. Not only is Peter dishing out quips and flips, but he's also feeding the world too. What a hero. This version was born in an ad for Hostess Twinkies, so naturally its own Marvel universe has to exist. And also, it's fun to make it exist and to think about it. When it came down to taking on villains, Spider-Man wouldn't web them up, instead he would just huck treats at them, because that always works. Twinkies, Hostess cakes, anything, you name it. Funny enough, in Spider-Verse issue 1, the cakes are referred to as golden sponge cakes so that they don't get sued. It's also the same issue where we see the end of Golden Sponge Cake Spidey. It's sad, but if he stuck around for too long, realistically, everybody would just get fat or riddled with cavities.
Spider sense tells me this cake isn't for eating. It's for throwing!
Getting close to the end, in number 3, MCU Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers is depicted as a former US Air Force fighter pilot who was given superhuman abilities when a lightspeed engine test went wrong, and she was exposed to the cosmic energy of the Tesseract and subsequently transformed into a human-Kree hybrid known as Veers via blood transfusion. In 1995, on the Kree Empire's capital planet of Hala, Danvers, then known as Vers, suffered from amnesia and recurring nightmares involving an older woman, particularly as a former Air Force test pilot who acquired cosmic energy force powers from the Tesseract after an explosion that wiped her memory. So, you can kinda see where that was going. But I'm including this version of Captain Marvel not because she's weird, but because for some reason everyone seemingly hates this version. So much so that when I mentioned how the MCU Captain Marvel could beat the MCU Hulk since MCU Thanos beat him and she was going to beat MCU Thanos if he didn't have the Power Stone at least, everyone still got mad at me. And some still hate me to this day. You should have seen my DMs after that video went out. And still, sometimes I get messages about how some of these fans hate me, okay? All because of my literal second video on the channel. And that's the reason I included this, so I can finally say my piece. Redemption is finally mine! Penultimately, in at number 2, Marvel. Marvel is the Captain Marvel of the Marvel Ultimate Earth, Earth 1610. For millennia, an ancient extraterrestrial race called the Kree have tracked and studied a mysterious planet-eating creature they called Galactus. Sounds like a Skyrim shout. The Supreme Intelligence restricted this knowledge to specially trained high-level Kree, fearing that if the true nature of Galactus became common knowledge, it would drive their race insane. Several years before Galactus was due to arrive in the Sol system, the Kree staged a covert observation mission on Earth, and Plus Commander Marvel underwent massive nanosurgery to appear human, going undercover as physicist Dr. Philip Lawson to investigate the human race. Growing fond of humans, Vel joined S.H.I.E.L.D.'s ACES program to speed up humanity's progress of the stars, helping to develop a zero-point energy source for manned spaceflight. On the day that the ACES-01 test article was going to be launched, the base was attacked by a Kree kill form with orders for Vel to aid humanities no further. Refusing, Vel just obliterated the kill form, but the effort left him powerless and he was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. After questioning by General Nick Fury and Captain Carol Danvers, Vel briefed them, the Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and Thor regarding the existence of Galactus and, you know, kind of updated them on the whole situation. Finally, in at number 1, Actor Marvel. The man who would one day be known as the Captain was an ordinary but slightly stupid human from Brooklyn. He spent his life frequenting bars and getting into fights. As a child, his alcoholic mother hung his teddy bear from a noose, so yeah, that would kind of mess you up. However, after gaining his powers and joining the anti-traitor group known as Next Wave, the Captain would want to change his name. While looking into using the name of Captain Marvel, he actually found out about someone totally different from the Captain Marvel of Earth 616 that we know. Instead, he learned about an adult film star who was using that name. Yes, you heard me right. When trying to use the name of Captain Marvel, the Captain came across an adult film actor who was using this name. And honestly, I think that's probably one of the funniest versions of this character that there is. I don't care if it's not Carol Danvers or Marvel, but it's someone going by the name of Captain Marvel making adult movies. Okay? And you know that's gonna be a number 1 spot for me, hands down. Technically, there is an Earth where all the Marvel characters are adult stars. And the MCU is just one big adult film franchise, which I guess would make the Avengers movies giant.
Starting off our list with an honorable mention at number 10, we have Captain Carter. Normally, I'd put my girl Peggy higher up on any list, but since she's less weird and more awesome, we've gotta put her here. Captain Carter actually originally debuted in the Marvel Puzzle Quest video game during a celebration for Captain America's 75th anniversary, but was given a fully fleshed out backstory and has been a fan favorite ever since. In a universe where Steve Rogers is assassinated before he can be given the super soldier serum, Peggy Carter is instead the one who becomes an incredibly strong and iconic hero for the Allied forces. The comics would continue her adventures, with her universe's New York City coming under attack with nuclear weapons by the Red Skull, and eventually lead to her joining the superhero team the Exiles after their multiverse spanning adventures brought them into contact. Next up on our list is the center point for one of the most controversial Marvel storylines of all time, the infamous Hydra Cap. Initially appearing to be the main Marvel Universe's Captain America, this version of Steve Rogers had grown up indoctrinated by Hydra's fascist ideologies and was actually sent to America to kill the creator of the superhuman serum for the Axis powers, but instead wound up deceiving his way into receiving the serum himself. Having wound up in the main Marvel Universe when their Steve Rogers was rejuvenated back to his usual age in a different storyline, this Hydra Cap was able to hide his evil intentions until the pivotal moment that he declared to the world those shocking words, "Hail Hydra." Seeing one of comics' most inspiring icons twisted in such a way was definitely unexpected, and definitely earns a surprising spot on this list. Coming in at number 8, we have the blood-sucking Vampire Cap. In a universe where Captain America fought and then lost against the villain Baron Blood, soon the entire Avengers team was overtaken by his vampiric disease. Consumed with a lust for both blood and power, this Steve Rogers began a year-long killing spree that culminated in killing Baron Blood and taking his place as the new Vampire King. This version had all of the benefits of the Super Soldier Serum, in addition to new vampire abilities such as healing so advanced, he was able to survive getting decapitated when facing off against several other Marvel heroes. I guess going for the head isn't as effective as we all thought.
And at 7, Phyla-Vell. After Genis-Vell, then known as Captain Marvel, previously destroyed and recreated the universe, the new version was subtly altered with Phyla-Vell's existence being one of the changes. Phyla-Vell was the second artificially created offspring of Captain Mar-Vell, who was created by her mother Elysius in the new universe because her first attempt, Genis-Vell, had been so successful. She fought her brother, who was insane at the time, and in the process of helping to restore his sanity, she then tried to claim the Captain Marvel title, though her brother refused to give it up. To save Rick Jones' girlfriend Marlo Chandler, Genis had to travel to the future to see what would be the cause of her future demise. He asked Phyla to stay behind on Earth to keep watch over Marlo, and in doing so she encountered the being known as Magus, who tried to kidnap Marlo. She and the telepath Moondragon foiled the plot, and Genis returned to Earth shortly after, telling her that he stopped a villainous plan to release Magus hundreds of years in the future, but wouldn't explain how. But like, bro, I just fought him, couldn't you have done that a little sooner? And at 6, AI Avengers. This android-based Captain Marvel was one of the many robotic versions of the Avengers created by Ras Maltra, which were in turn inspired by Egghead and his AI Avengers. They were dispatched to fight off the Hulk and the forces of Hydra at the Mount, but were ultimately destroyed. But I mean, like, come on. An AI version of Captain Marvel is pretty weird, but honestly, based on what I talk about on Top 10 Gaming, it's par for the course for me. Halfway through into number 5, Genis-Vell. After a falling out with Captain America, Rick Jones found himself mentally drawn to a pair of extraterrestrial golden bracelets, the Nega Bands. Donning the bands, Rick slammed his wrists together with all of his might, and his atoms traded places with those of the exiled Kree Captain Mar-Vell. Joined together, Rick and Captain Marvel lived a shared existence. During the epic Kree-Skrull War, Rick and Captain Marvel became pawns of the Kree Supreme Intelligence, who unleashed the untapped psionic potential of Rick's mind, the Destiny Force, to put an end to the war. Sometime later though, as a result of the exposure to deadly nerve gas, Captain Mar-Vell perished from incurable systemic cancer. As Rick slowly began to move on with his life, eventually getting married, Mar-Vell's love, Elysius, felt more alone than ever. Using Titanian science, Elysius sampled some of Mar-Vell's genetic structure to conceive a child, Genis. To protect him from Captain Mar-Vell's enemies, Genis was artificially aged to maturity and taken to an isolated world where he would be safe from harm. Upon discovering of his true lineage though, Genis donned wristlets modeled after the Negabands worn by his father and was determined to carry on his father's heroic tradition, eventually calling himself Captain Marvel. And at 4, William Mar-Vell. William Mar-Vell, also known as Billy Mar-Vell, was the combination of both versions of Captain Marvel from both DC and Marvel in the shared amalgam Earth. This version of the character shares the powers of both Captain Marvel and Shazam from the DC universe, since originally Shazam was named Captain Marvel. This version of the character was also a member of the Judgment League Avengers and first appeared in JLX #1 from 1996. On this Earth 9602, he's actually a young boy who, when shouts the word Kree, transforms into a super scientifically fully enhanced adult hero. His fellow members of the Judgment League Avengers are not aware of the secret though. After Angel Hawk, Canary, and Goliath found Super Soldier, Captain Marvel soon joined and formed the Judgment League Avengers. He was then transported by Doctor Strange Fate with other members of the Judgment League to battle Thanos. When Mariner was accused of blowing up oil freighters, the US government branded him an eco-terrorist, and Captain Marvel and other non-Metamutant members of the JLA captured him and imprisoned him without a trial. So kind of a little wishy-washy on the whole morals thing.
Coming in at number 3, we're back in the world of animal puns with Croctor Strange. That's right, Loki isn't the only magical hero with an alligator alter ego. Hailing from the same reality as the meme-worthy Spectacular Spider-Man, Croctor Strange is an anthropomorphic crocodile who learned his magic from a being known as the Rancid One and often clashes with the pig-themed Dormammu. And if that's not punny enough for you, this version of Strange is also a member of the Unhumanati instead of the Illuminati, which also features a mouse-themed version of Iron Man. Ooh, and I thought they said Disney taking over wouldn't have any weird side effects. Coming in at number 2, we have a wild combination with the DC Universe with Doctor Strange Fate. During the Marvel vs. DC miniseries of comics, an alternate reality known as Amalgam Comics was born, featuring combinations of iconic DC and Marvel heroes put into one body. One of the most notable of all of these crazy combinations was the being known as Doctor Strange Fate, a three-way mix-up between Dr. Stephen Strange, Dr. Charles Xavier, and the DC hero Dr. Fate. Man, this guy's got more PhDs than a diploma factory. With all of these magical, telepathic, and reality-warping powers combined, Doctor Strange Fate was incredibly powerful, but one of the weirdest aspects of the character was the fact that he knew he was just a temporary creation of a crossover event, and thus spent much of his time attempting to find a way to keep his reality ongoing. How very meta of you, Doctor Strange Fate. And finally, coming in at our top spot is the only Doctor Strange variant with feathers. We have Ductor Strange. Hailing from the same weird world as Howard the Duck, aka Earth 791,021, you might be wondering why a duck-themed version of Doctor Strange is labeled as weirder than a crocodile-themed one. And that is because this Ductor Strange is also a drunk. Studying under the ancient wino, this Strange's version of communicating with spirits is literally drinking spirits, although he does still possess enough magical energy to be able to transport himself and various other duck-themed heroes to different dimensions, including the mainstream Marvel universe. Just maybe lay off the booze a little bit, I'm not sure how well birds can handle their liquor.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Grey Hulk. One of the more badass versions of the Hulk was also the earliest. See, originally Stan Lee wanted the Hulk to be grey, but ink problems made him green. The Incredible Hulk made his first smashing appearance in 1962 when a teenager, Rick Jones, was about to be caught up in a gamma bomb test. Scientist Bruce Banner ran out and threw him to safety, but in doing so he himself was caught in said explosion, and in turn he was irradiated with radioactive particles, becoming the Grey Hulk. Our green guy, the main 616 Hulk, is referred to as the Savage Hulk, and Grey Hulk is said to be weaker. They made him an entirely different version in the comics to help explain the color change. They were both fighting to control Bruce. Things get spicy during Peter David's run when we meet Joe Fixit, this mobster Grey Hulk working at a casino. Imagine this guy asking you for your ID. I would bring 5 pieces and a passport, just to be safe. So intimidating. And his hat too, like he looks friendly, but he also looks like when he shakes your hand, he's gonna break all your knuckles. Number 9, Skulk. Coming to life in Doctor Strange Fate issue 1 back in 1996, Marvel's Bruce Banner combined with DC's Solomon Grundy. How fun. Another grey version, but a little more out there this time around. Solomon appeared right before Bruce Banner was caught in that gamma bomb explosion, so now the two ended up fusing together, creating Skulk. Skulk was taught by Doctor Strange Fate that in order to remain in human form, you need the assistance of magic. Black Widow's palm dances will not work in this universe, my friend. So Banner was like, alright, I'll work for you, just make sure I don't become that awful pale monster. Deal? Deal. Great, awesome. Skulk's last comic was in Lobo the Duck issue 1 just a year later. He died in the destruction caused by the Gold Kidney Lady. Yes, you heard me correctly. And before we list off some other fun versions of the Hulk, if you want to skulk smash that like button, that would be lovely. Those clicks really do help us out a lot here. You all rock. Now let's keep this list going. Number 8, Peter Parker. Looking now to the 2006 bullet point storyline, if you haven't already guessed from the title, this one's a superhero swap. We love those. Now this is a life where Uncle Ben, well, still died, but he died a lot earlier, so unfortunately he wasn't around to mentor Peter. Give him the whole with great power comes great responsibility rundown. So now Peter's stealing Jeeps, he's blasting Green Day and flipping off the elderly, just the complete opposite guy that we know and love. During the Jeep joyride, it ran out of gas, so Sneaky Pete went off to look for some more to help fill up. Now while he was searching, that's when he just happened to stumble across that gamma bomb test, and he didn't realize that he had this Hulk side to him until later on that night. His friends got in trouble, so they blamed Peter, and that's when he got really angry, and then he turned into the Hulk for the first time. It was nuts. Aunt May straight up had a heart attack. More than fair. After this point, retired Steve Rogers came back, suited up as Iron Man, and then began hunting him down. This universe is crazy. Peter Hulk killed Steve Rogers, and he didn't go down until Galactus arrived on Earth. Not a bad run.
Coming in at number 7, we have the powerless Dr. Stephen Strange. In issue number 40 of the first volume of Marvel's original What If comics, we got to see an alternate reality where Baron Mordo wound up becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. And while most of the story would focus on Mordo's misadventures in the role, Doctor Strange's role in it is definitely unique to say the least. When Stephen Strange showed up on the Ancient One's doorstep wondering if there was any possibility the mystic arts could heal his hands, the Ancient One simply taught him some anxiety-decreasing meditation, and then sent him on his way, making Strange believe that it was all some sort of yoga retreat. This version of Strange would go on to merely become a peaceful professor at a medical school, which, compared to the Sorcerer Supreme's usual lifestyle, is definitely a little bit, well, strange. Coming in at number 6, we have Strange Supreme from the first season of the Disney Plus show, What If? In an alternate timeline where instead of losing his hands in a car accident, Stephen Strange instead has to endure the loss of the love of his life, Dr. Christine Palmer. Desperate to bring her back, Strange trains in the mystic arts, but finds himself drawn to much darker powers as he realizes that Christine's death is a fixed point in this timeline, and it would take an incredible amount of magical power to undo it. Turning to the dark side and becoming Strange Supreme, Strange absorbs centuries worth of magical beings before finally absorbing even his own better self. Tragically, even when he does have enough power to save Christine, she is disgusted at the monster he's become to save her, leaving him alone as the entire universe collapses around him. Coming in at number 5, we have the elderly Doctor Strange from Earth 982. An alternate universe that mainly focused on potential children of Marvel heroes and the next generation of crime fighters, Earth 982, or MC2 as it's more commonly known, is also home to one of the most unique versions of Doctor Strange, because instead of his traditional salt and pepper look, this Stephen Strange has gone full Gandalf the White. Having long since retired from the position of Sorcerer Supreme, an elderly Strange is called back into action as a master of the mystic arts when the new wielder of the role, Doc Magus, begins to tamper with darker powers. And while Strange would need help from the younger generation of heroes, this grizzled but still magical sorcerer is definitely one of the coolest looking versions of the character. Coming in at number 4, we have Doctor Strange of the year 1602 from the Marvel series of the same name. In this offshoot of the multiverse where many of Marvel's classic heroes were now born during the era of the 17th century, Dr. Stephen Strange was an advisor to the first Queen Elizabeth, and the right-hand man to the monarchy when it came to all matters relating to magic. This old-timey take on the character would be weird enough on its own, but gets extra bizarre when you consider that this version of Strange was eventually executed by the monarchy for treason, but continued to give guidance to this Earth's heroes as a ghost from the afterlife. Talk about not retiring when your time is up, am I right? At number 3, we've got another character with a Dragon Ball Z style fusion in the form of Clark Kent, the Super Soldier. And no, this didn't suddenly switch over to a DC Comics themed video. In the Amalgam universe, where the Marvel and DC multiverses have been compressed and combined into one unified world by the megaversal beings known as the Brothers, Super Soldier is the result of mixing the backstories of both Captain America and Superman. Clark Kent is a young man from Kansas who winds up receiving his powers of strength, heat vision, and flight not from being a Kryptonian, but by volunteering for the Super Soldier program to help America during the Second World War, a process which is spied on by a very mischievous Jimmy Olsen. He would go on to fight the leader of Hydra, a version of Lex Luthor, and Super Metallo, a combination of Metallo and Red Skull's usual brand of killer robots. Double the trouble, double the fun. Coming in at number 2, we've got a version of Captain America that doesn't even need America. That's right, it's Captain Avalon. Coming from a Marvel universe inspired by classic sword and sorcery fantasy, this version of Cap is merely called Stevan until his son, funnily enough named Stevan Jr., is kidnapped by the Dreadlord, an evil alternate version of Baron Zemo. While he doesn't appear to have any actual magical abilities or equivalents to the Super Soldier formula, Captain Avalon is a brave knight at the peak of human condition, and his red and blue shield still brings the core of this classic character to light, even if America doesn't really exist in this Game of Thrones style world. And finally, coming in at the top spot for our weirdest alternate versions of Captain America, we have a choice that's not even human. That's right, it's Captain Americat. Hailing from Earth 8311, the very same world that's home to the spectacular Spider-Ham, this version of Cap is named Stephen Mouser, leads a group of superpowered animals known as the Scavengers, and in another groan-inducing animal pun, most notably led them into battle against the supervillain Moltron. While his appearances have mostly been related to side stories compared to Spider-Ham's main adventures, Captain Americat is definitely the oddest version of Steve Rogers that we've yet to see in the Marvel Multiverse.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Anthony the Vampire. Making his first appearance in Ultimate Avengers issue 14, Anthony was the greatest vampire hunter who ever walked this earth. He trained Daredevil, Blade, and Edward Cullen. Okay, the last one I lied about, but still, you get it. When he meets up with Blade later on, he has a new look. He was eventually bitten by a vampire, so he became their leader as well. The coolest part about Anthony is that he uses a Mark I Iron Man suit to get around during the day, so the sun doesn't, evaporate him or whatever. He captured and turned Smart Hulk into a bloodsucker, but his armor was stolen and used by Stick to fight back. Another Tony, another suit. Imagine you're in trouble and this guy rolls up on you. What a surprise that would be. Issue 16 of Ultimate Avengers opens with a great Twilight parody, but this is also the last time we see this Iron Man take flight. And that's because Hulk punched his head off, and usually when he does that, you don't come back, vampire or not. Number 9, Iron Lantern. From the Amalgam comic universe, Iron Lantern is of course a millionaire who is in charge of Stark Aircraft. While he's working on a flight simulator, it straight up took off and flew him somewhere else. Best simulator ever, if I do say so myself. Then he crash landed on the ground, injuring Stark, and he realized he was brought to a crashed alien spaceship. That spaceship belonged to none other than Roman Sir, who died before getting a chance to talk to Hal Stark. Not being in the best condition, obviously, after the rocky landing, Hal started working with his newfound tech on a new suit, hopefully to save his life. The Green Lantern upgrade of his suit saved his life for sure, but it also gave him the power to create anything out of green energy. He used a battery that reminded him of a lantern to do so. And then he went on to fight the aliens that had shot down Roman Sir and continued fighting enemies such as Madame Sapphire and Mandarin Esto, who, yes, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be great. It really helps us out here quite a bit. You're the best. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get right back into this list of weird Iron Mans. Number 8, Lord Iron. Coming from Marvel 1602, Lord Iron was amongst the other heroes who rose to fame, but a little bit back in time. See, Captain America was literally shot back in time, so the Age of Heroes has to begin there. And in turn, we get some fun versions of our Avengers. Anthony Stark was taken and held captive in the Holy Land during the English and Spanish War, a little different than the cave that he ended up with in our time. He was forced to make weapons still for them for weeks, mirroring Tony's origin in a fun, older way. David Banner was torturing him this time around though, so Anthony makes his own suit powered by lightning bottles. Okay. Now it doesn't matter which timeline Tony ends up in, he's destined to be Iron Man one way or another. Number 7. Iron Man Noir. Coming from the Noir series, Iron Man of Earth 90214 had to go all the way to Atlantis to fix his heart problem. What am I talking about? Let's find out. Tony in this reality was an industrialist adventurer. It feels like National Treasure almost. We meet Tony and the crew and they're looking for something called the Jade Mask. This mask that was said to cure any kind of ailment, so he figured, hey, it's worth a shot to fix the old ticker. It didn't work, so some traitors then revealed themselves once the mask was found, so Tony and Rhodey escaped and returned to New York. He goes on yet another treasure hunt with Rhodey, this time to Atlantis, because he heard a rumor that this power source could also do wonders to his heart, maybe, perhaps. Tony gets the trident, and again, he gets betrayed. Zemo and his forces were strong enough to kidnap Pepper, and Tony and Rhodes need a new plan. They travel to Zemo's castle, and it's then that it's revealed that Zemo is actually Tony's father, brainwashed by Strucker. And he was also equipped with Iron Man suits because action and adventure. As far as noir storylines go, Iron Man isn't my favorite, but the whole Nathan Drake vibe that Tony has is still quite fun. And also, Atlantis. It's kind of weird. Dive in.
At number 7, we have Ultimate Captain America, a character that probably wasn't intended to be read as weird when first created, but has since turned out to be a bit more of a unique interpretation of the character. Notably more destructive, assertive, and just a bit grumpier than most other interpretations of Steve Rogers, he could be seen as a different interpretation of American patriotism than more classical versions of the character take from. In another wild and tragic twist, this Cap's version of Red Skull is actually his literal son, the result of his last night with his World War II era girlfriend, Gail Richards. Completely unknown about by Steve and born after he was frozen in ice, the baby was taken by the military and grew up in foster care. Growing up with an inferiority complex, this child would eventually scar himself and become the criminal mastermind, the Red Skull. Talk about a messed up family, Steve. Coming in at number 6, it's Steve Rogers. No wait, it's Stephen Strange. No wait again, it's actually Steven Rogers, Soldier Supreme. In a pocket dimension known as Warp World, where every soul of the Marvel Universe has been merged with that of another, Doctor Strange and Captain America were DNA digivolved into the combined form of the Soldier Supreme. In this unique part of the multiverse, the superhuman experiments done by the Allies during World War II were achieved through magic instead of science, with the weak and scrawny Steven Rogers being taught the ways of dark magic and learning powerful sorcery. With a best friend known as Bucky Wong, a literal winter soldier after he becomes a ghost, this combo of characters is definitely a standout in a multiverse full of standouts. At number 5, we've got the alternate future showstopper of Danielle Cage, the Captain America of the future. The grown-up child of both Jessica Jones and Luke Cage on Earth 15061, Danielle has taken up the mantle of Captain America in a Manhattan where climate change makes flooding incredibly frequent and gangs roam the streets. With her own arch nemesis in the form of the Golden Skull, Danielle Cage is also one of the physically strongest Captain Americas throughout the multiverse, inheriting both the strength-based power sets of her parents and letting her yeet that red and blue shield as hard as it's ever been thrown before. Coming in at number 4, we've got a bit of a change of rank with Colonel America, aka Zombie Cap. In a world where an infected sentry brings a zombie plague from beyond the stars, and also where Steve Rogers has achieved the rank of Colonel and the presidency of the United States, America's hero is bidden along with many of the Avengers when they try to contain the sentry situation. The Colonel is even the one to eventually bite Spider-Man on the shoulder when the younger hero tries to help. This zombified version of Steve Rogers retains all of his powers and more, surviving with half of his brain exposed until he was finally defeated by his enemy the Red Skull during a final battle over who gets to devour the corpse of Galactus. Definitely some very, very weird stuff.
Number 3, Venom Hulk. Venom Hulk is as terrifying as you think. It all goes down in What If issue 4. It shows us what would happen if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man. So if the Fantastic Four hadn't have been able to separate Peter and the suit initially. It's a fun little alternative. It gets pretty ugly quickly and the other Avengers are called upon to try and stop Peter from causing more irreversible damage. Doctor Strange is hurling spells at him for hours, still it's no use. And you'd think when the Hulk came along he could just, huck Peter into a few walls until he calms down. But he arrives and the symbiote sees his power and he's like, that looks pretty good, I want that, give me. And then when it comes into contact with the Hulk, this nightmare is born. When Thor comes in to hopefully try and end this disaster of a situation, he too is consumed by the symbiote. I really hope we get to see some sort of evil version of the Hulk in this What If Disney show. I mean, Venom Hulk would be amazing. I would love to see this issue on TV. Might be a little long shot, but maybe Grey Hulk perhaps. I don't know. Some sort of evil Hulk is coming, I feel it. Number 2, Lizard Hulk. Still green this time around, just a little more wet and scaly. He comes from Earth 19919. Robert Banner, of course, has a similar origin as the Hulk that we're now familiar with, only he was infected by the spider virus in Spider Island issue 1. So a little more this time around. Now he's got extra arms and he's even more powerful. Just what you want. The Spider Queen at this point is standing tall over Manhattan with the residents of New York City turning into spiders, which I gotta say, worst thing I've ever heard. I feel itchy just reading that. And as for our heroes, it's probably best if they switch to a different animal's DNA to avoid the whole mind control Spider Queen awful situation. So Captain America gets a hairy upgrade and the Hulk gets paired with some lizard DNA, resulting in a weird but exciting storyline. Major Godzilla vibes over here.
Coming in at number 10, we have the undead Doctor Strange from the Marvel Zombies universe. While this version of Stephen Strange was able to avoid the initial outbreak of the zombie virus that destroyed their version of Earth, he was eventually tragically bitten and converted into a member of the undead army while defending a dimensional doorway that would have allowed the zombie swarm to invade and infest other realities. The newly zombified Doctor Strange now uses this doorway to peer through the alternate worlds of the Marvel Multiverse and find ideal worlds for the zombie invasion to begin anew, making this a very weird but also very dangerous interpretation of Doctor Strange. Coming in at number 9, we have the Soldier Supreme, a very odd combination of Doctor Strange and the Punisher. On an alternate Earth where vampires have killed most of the world's heroes and converted much of the normal population, one of the few vigilantes remaining is Frank Castle. Possessed by the spirit and knowledge of Dr. Stephen Strange as a last-ditch effort to save this reality, the Punisher and the Sorcerer Supreme combined into a single vampire-slaying enemy, turning the Punisher's violent tendencies into the last defense against an unstoppable vampire army. Coming in at number 8, we have the Ultimate Universe version of Doctor Strange, aka Stephen Strange Jr. In the Ultimate Marvel Universe, this version of Doctor Strange that we're introduced to is actually the son of a more traditional interpretation of the character. Following in his father's footsteps, Stephen Strange Jr. eventually becomes the Sorcerer Supreme following his dad's disappearance. But the odd part that gets him on this list is unfortunately his over-the-top and needlessly nasty death. During the Ultimatum event, a highly controversial storyline in which Magneto wiped out millions of lives and resulted in dozens of over-the-top and edgy deaths for many Marvel heroes, Doctor Strange had his head popped like a literal balloon by Dormammu possessing his cloak. Most people dislike this event because of how deliberately edgy it tried to be, and with an anticlimactic death like this, it's really not hard to see why. I mean, his cloak? Really?
Number 7, Ultimate Hulk. This version of Bruce is quite troubled. He was taught to just stay out of his parents' way growing up, and he also hated himself pretty much. He wanted to be ripped like Captain America, he didn't like his noodle arms, it was a rough go for him in the Ultimate Universe. So when Nick Fury got together the brightest minds to recreate the Super Soldier Serum, Envious Banner was on that team. He did figure it out, I mean, or so he thought, but he kept the info to himself. He didn't want any other scientist getting credit. But he took it a little bit too far when he also decided to keep the human testing process to himself as well. He injected himself and became Ultimate Hulk. The first time he changed, he injured Mary and Richard Parker, but down the road he injected himself again, but this time he mixed Super Soldier Serum with Hulk Serum, and then he turned to gray, and his first plan of attack was, of course, as you would think, to fight Freddie Prinze Jr. Yeah. Number 6, Infernal Hulk. First appearing in Deadpool Annual 1, this version picks up after Bruce Banner became the Sorcerer Supreme, and his first trick was to separate the Hulk from himself and just banish him as far away as possible. And what better place to throw him than the pits of hell? While in the land down under, Hulk became Infernal Hulk. A little more scary looking than Joe Fixit, just a little bit. So when our 616 banner arrived to this universe with Spider-Man, Infernal Hulk traded places in hell with the other Bruce's Hulk persona. So now that Infernal Hulk is free and he's going back after Banner. He's pissed. So Deadpool, Spidey, and Supreme Banner, they all figured, okay, let's just reverse this banishing spell, and then as soon as Banner shows back up, we break his neck. All right, go team, let's do it. Number 5. Hulk 2099. John Eisenhart this time around made his first appearance in 2099 Unlimited issue 1 back in 1993. This is the future, of course, one of many alternate Marvel futures where heroes are simply no more. But fear not, as we still have cults. Thank God, you gotta have those cults. One cult called the Knights of Banner was piquing the interest of Eisenhart, but at this point, he was this LA movie studio guy and he wanted to make a movie about these knights or this Hulk cult or whatever. They're pretty much us in the future. They worship the Hulk, they have meetings, they talk about him, they probably create top 10 lists, I don't know. But when they turned down the money and said beat it, Eisenhart wasn't happy. So he tricked one of the young members, Gawain, into spilling the beans about the cult and how they're performing illegal gamma experiments. Gawain is actually a reference to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, an Arthurian story that combined the beheading game and the exchange of winnings. And that's exactly what happened here. John reported this cult and its new secrets, and the police raided and killed everybody. All but Gawain. So John tried to fix what he'd caused, but it was far too late. After a gamma bomb went off, he was turned into the 2099 Hulk. Consumed now with guilt as well, he vowed to protect the young knight, and when Draco killed Gawain, spoilers, he figured he would just defend the people from future threats. Number 4. Compound Hulk. First appearing in Hulk Volume 2, Issue 30, Clue is a smarter version of that Grey Hulk that I mentioned earlier in this list. He's an advanced clone, rather, created by Xemnu. Now, Clue was the result of a cloning gone wrong, classic, and then when Clue and Xemnu were fighting Red Hulk, Impossible Man came in, he was watching the whole thing, and he used his powers to merge both of those guys into the compound Clue. He didn't last long at all, but anytime the words merge and Hulk are in play, it's bound to get weird. Number 3. Steel Corpse. Tony and his suit have always been so close, it's had its back many times, sometimes even acting for itself and making a judgment call. Like in Iron Man 3, it literally woke Tony up from a nightmare aggressively. We love that future tech. But in the Age of X storyline, the suit literally has his back as Tony and the suit begin to merge. Ugh, I'm itchy just reading this. This started right after a virus began taking its toll on Tony. He was rapidly declining health-wise, so he chose a more fitting name, Steel Corpse, to be kind of funny, but also he looks like a corpse, so he's like, I'm just gonna admit it. He, alongside other, much healthier Avengers, were tasked to take down mutants, but when the gang got there, they of course opted to save them instead. Superhero twist of logic, we love it. Only Tony's advanced suit wasn't exactly on board with his new plan, and it started to act out by itself. It still wanted to save the day, although this was not the right way to do it. Captain America had no choice but to end the life of Steel Corpse in order to save the mutants. Number 2. Iron Goblin. Making his first appearance in the Spider Island series, Iron Goblin wasn't made through any reality warping or anything like that. Instead, this happens during the Resistance assault on Spider-Queen, which is sounding crazier than what I just said. Tony Stark ends up getting captured and infected with the spider virus. He's going nuts at this point, so the rest of the heroes try and snap him out of it by using Goblin Formula, which is a solution, I guess. I don't know, read a book, read a comic book, Avengers. Something bad's gonna happen. So we went from being a spider monster to Iron Goblin. Pretty crazy 24 hours for Tony. Tony was still Tony after this point though, despite the evil green look on his face. Like he even said Norman stole his armor before, so he was just evening it out. Haha, he's funny, he's still Tony, nice. But as time went by, every minute that passed, that formula started to in fact change Tony. Like for example, he was flying around on the glider, although he can fly with his suit. It's not looking good. He knew he was going insane, so he sacrificed himself when the Queen's army attacked. Still a hero nonetheless, although he's mean and green and throwing pumpkin bombs. And finally, number 1, Iron Hammer. Coming from Warp World, Iron Hammer, aka Stark Odinson, first came to life in issue 3 of Infinity Wars. So when Gamora had the Infinity Stones, she trapped everybody's soul in the Soul Gem, and then folded the universe in half, which resulted in all of our heroes merging together. Pretty fun. So rightfully referred to as Warp World, we soon get to meet Soldier Supreme, Ghost Panther, Weapon Hex, and Iron Hammer. Stark Odinson in this pocket universe is the son, of course, of Howard Odin, chieftain of Asgard. He has the Iron Hammer armor, and of course he has a massive literal hammer of the gods to get the message across. Being a combination of both, he can face powerful villains like Stain Odinson, who is a blend of Loki and Obadiah Stane, and even Madam Hell, one of the coolest looking versions definitely, and also one of the more powerful. A great note to end on.